Laurel Elders is the founder of the ICF-accredited Institute for Integrative Coach Training, headquartered in Tucson, Arizona. She began her career as a coach in 2005 after noticing that we are living in pivotal times and coaching is powerfully tapping into the next phase of human potential in ways never experienced before. Laurel is invested in bringing the highest levels of coaching, training, and mentoring into a world that needs people's gifts, talents, purpose, and heart now more than ever. Her clients and students are torch holders for positive impact locally and globally in service to current and future generations to come. Hi there, welcome to PBTV, and I'm so excited to have my friend and colleague and coach with us today, all the way up from Tucson, Arizona, Laurel Elders. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with our audience of PBTV. We're really about inspiration and empowerment and fun and joy, and you exemplify those qualities.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us. And today we are going to explore this idea of potential. And in the coaching world, we all want to, as coaches and as clients, it's fair to say that we're wanting the best for our clients and for them to reach their highest potential in what I call their legacy potential. So would you agree with that? That we're wanting our friends and our clients to reach their potential?
Absolutely. And I love how you've connected legacy and potential. Because it's like, I look at potential like a doorway into legacy, which we can talk more about.
Oh, that's excellent. Yes, we will. So I've heard you speak a little bit about on this subject about potential, and I love how you have talked about this concept and really inviting clients and other coaches to explore it for themselves. And so I would really like to know, and I think the audience would like to know, what is your definition of potential?
This is one of my favorite topics. To me, potential is about capacity and possibility. So the more that we expand our capacity for integrative thinking, our own concept of wholeness, and the more we step into possibility. So it's like expanding our capacity also expands our access to possibility. The other thing about possibility and our potential, and potential in particular, is that it's kind of, it's a paradox in that the minute we define it, we're also limiting it. Isn't that interesting?
Can you speak a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so the more definition we put on it, it's like that puts a box around it. So that's the irony in it, is that in order to reach a fuller potential, we have to look every step of the way and look at stepping out of that box to seeing what else is possible. So there's this link between possibility and potential.
So this idea and this topic of potential just has me really excited right now, and I want to unpack that a little bit more if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So in tantric philosophy as well, I keep referring back to that because to me it's my world, and it's the world. And in this idea of limitation is such a tenet of tantric philosophy, because as we embody in these amazing physical bodies, we already have this limitation because we have limited knowledge, limitations of being human. And one of the great things about this idea of philosophy from a tantric perspective is that underneath all that is this unbounded freedom that has unbounded potential. And so what I hear you say is that there's this dance that we are engaged in life, is to be our fullest potential, and yet we have these limitations. And then we're going to dance and sort of uncover once again this feeling and connection to something greater, and that's inside of us, that's just unbounded with unlimited potential.
Yes, and I see this being so impactful in our own lives spiritually when we believe that we're only human, and that does limit us.
Yes. Yes.
We are so much more.
We are so much more.
Yes.
And there's this, again, I see it as a dance between being fully in this body and forgetting that we're so much more, and then that awakening that happens, that like, oh yeah, I really am unlimited, I really am expansive and have so much more potential than this mind thinks I do.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love that. Laurel, can you please tell us about the current models of self-development and this idea of potential and an integrative approach to potential?
Yes, absolutely. So the current models will tell us to start here with who I am right now, and then work to develop myself from this reference point to move forward. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But in integrative thinking, we first introduce someone to their highest self and have their highest self inform their answers. Completely different experience.
I have a twofold question. Please explain from your perspective what highest self, define what your highest self is, and then could you give us in the audience an example of how this approach, this integrative approach might look like, what it might look like with the client, with the potential client.
So highest self is the true self versus the false self. We are not our defense mechanisms. We are not our fears. We are not our limiting beliefs. Those are the effect, not the cause. You are the cause. And a lot of times people get stuck in the self-deception that they're not the cause, or they're not yet in touch with that side of themselves yet that is the cause. So let's say that's the potential. So highest self would be the unclouded self. So in coaching, what that looks like, to answer the second part, is that the coach helps the client clear the runway, right? Let's look at the limiting beliefs. Let's get those out of the way. Let's look at the fears. Let's get those out of the way. And that gives people access to their highest self. And it's right there at any moment. It's beautiful because it's ready to answer any question that anybody has. Potential's like the sun. It's always shining. Sometimes there's some clouds that get in the way, but the sun is always still shining. It's always there for us.
And what I heard you say then is potential is really linked to this authentic highest self.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
the
to me, they're
connection.
just like right there. You know, your highest self is there ready to create that next thing that you're looking to create, or be that next thing that you're looking to be. And here's what's really fascinating is that, you know, a lot of us go on this quest to find ourselves, and that's about the true self. Like, who are we authentically? What do we value? Who am I without all those limits? But then on the other side of that is, who do I want to create myself to be? Right? So once we find ourselves, then we can create ourselves. We can choose who we want to be in this world and how we want to show up. And that is really key.
Well, that leads right into the work that I've been really led to most recently, how my coaching career and my teaching career has led me to this idea of legacy, and that when you're living your legacy, you get to create it. You
Yes.
are the creator. And you could create from this place of limiting beliefs and diminished self-worth and cultural enculturation, or you can create and live your legacy from this place of unlimited potential. When we tap into this core being that's inside of us.
Yeah.
Laura, one of the areas that I see can be potentially discomforting to clients and people is this idea of highest potential and purpose. It almost feels to me that it could be so intimidating that people think it's so big
or so far away,
so
even, right?
Yeah, so could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in reality, all it takes is willingness. So you want to look at it like that, the sun and the clouds. So the sun is always shining, and despite what's going on with the clouds and the weather, the sun is always shining. So we have access to that potential, that wholeness, that part of us that's whole and complete and has everything we need, all of our resources, every moment. So potential is not necessarily accessed out there. It's not necessarily this big nebulous thing. It's responding in the moment, and what it takes to respond is just willingness. Just willingness to say, you know what, I'm feeling afraid. Let me just sit for a minute. You know what, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Let me just be for a minute. And getting back to that place where we're at peace. And then when we're at peace, we can ask, what do we want to come of this? And then you step into possibility. And I love the question also, what do you want to be the possibility of in this?
Yes, I love that question.
Yes, so we're beginning with the end in mind. And that helps us to access that potential so that we're experiencing life as masterful, and yet we haven't mastered anything, right? We don't need to be perfect. It's there all with us all along. Yeah.
So it's coming from the inside. We're filling ourselves up with what is already there. Just the clouds have covered us, and then they move away. And so this whole idea of highest potential is really simply being willing to access what is already there.
Yeah.
And if we do that, that in fact is what living our purpose is. For some people, it may be starting this $1 million corporation that's going to help the environment and everybody on the planet.
Yeah.
Or it simply is being in the fullness of who we are in the moment with this person that we're with in the moment.
And with ourselves.
And with
Yeah,
ourselves.
so we can access ourselves, and when we return to that present moment, we can see the spectrum of possibilities instead of getting stuck.
Yes.
Right, and projection and fear, but we can be present to possibility.
Laurel, why do you feel it's important for all of us to aspire to reaching our full potential, emotional, spiritually, and this idea of living your legacy?
This one's big. This is a deep question.
I love deep questions.
Yeah, me too. So many levels. One, I don't know that everyone does aspire, but those that do, I think this is an important thing to explore for those that do. The first thing that I notice is that we are living in pivotal times globally. We have now, as a human race on the planet, we've reached large-scale impact. And that weighs pretty heavy on a lot of our hearts, even though we may or may not be talking about it. So the really thing important to note is that our approaches nowadays are mostly linear. And you'll notice, even in the corporations and companies, they have a more linear approach, which is not helpful big picture. Right, so there's this whole other aspect to reaching our potential that we still have yet to explore. So this is why I have hope and I'm excited, because on one hand, well, let me just tell you, when I was younger, I grew up and I looked at the world and I was like, oh, the environment, all these things are happening, and my heart just sank, and I grew up angry that there was so much injustice, and there was the poor environment, and all of these things, and it wore really heavy on my heart. But and what came from that was I thought, oh, we've reached our potential, now we're headed downhill. And what I found is that that's not true. In truth, we have not yet reached true success. So if I say to you, Paulette, guess what? I just created this $1 million company. Would you say I'm successful?
I would ask
if that's my goal.
If that's your goal.
That was my goal.
Yes.
I reached my goal.
You reached your goal. Are you happy? Does it make you feel really good?
Yeah, because I reached that one goal.
Okay. Okay, then I would say in that particular moment, in this particular endeavor, you're successful.
Yeah. And here's the trap. Here's the self-deception. If I say to you, Paulette, I'm really successful. I created this $1 million company. Oh, but the environment is being ruined and people are really unhappy. And, we have high turnover. But that's okay because we reached our goal. You see? So true success happens when we're successful in all areas. Not just one. And so we're really selling ourselves short. So it's not that we've reached our potential and we're headed downhill. No, we're only halfway there. We have yet to discover what is possible when we begin to think more integratively.
So you feel there's hope?
Absolutely, yes. The more integratively we think and we approach life, the bigger our solutions will be that have a positive impact on everything that we do.
Well, that makes me feel more hopeful and inspired.
Yeah.
That, yes, am I reaching my potential, and how could I personally then work with people in a way that helps them find and discover more of who they are so that they could reach their highest self. So it's that trickle-down effect in a whole different way of thinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love what you said. It's like through their self, because this is not a problem of intelligence. The problems we're facing today, it's not because we're not intelligent enough to fix them. It's because we're disconnected from those other aspects. We're disconnected from true self, right? Not one person, if you ask them, would you like to harm the environment? Nobody's going to say yes to that, right? So it's really just getting people in touch with their truth. Then the answers start showing up. Oh, how can we be that $1 million company and have a good impact on the environment and have a good impact on people's lives and our employees? So the more people that open up and step into their potential is going to leave a really positive impact on the solutions that we're providing everyone. I mean, this is from if you're retired and you decide to volunteer at the library and you build a community, beautiful, the world needs that. If you decide to step into politics and become an activist and find solutions that are leaving positive impact in all ways, great, the world needs that. And so one of my messages is that the world needs people's gifts now more than ever. Like, gifts are within. So I like to say that we have life figured out when we have life figured within. And so that's huge. So it doesn't take every single person to wake up to their potential, but we do need those that feel called to answer the calling, to say, yes, I'm here to help. I'm here to see a bigger picture, and I'm here to take a stand for the greater good, because we're all in this together.
Laurel, I know you're an incredible rock climber, even though I've heard you say that it doesn't come easy for you and you're not that good. But I have seen videos and I have seen you doing handstand on top of this rock somewhere, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in awe of you. And I am curious if you would talk a little bit more about that, like why you think you're not that good, and from the outside, it's amazing, but even deeper than that, how I've heard you talk about rock climbing and how it maps onto a person moving towards and living their highest potential. Can you speak about that?
Oh, absolutely. There again, so much here, metaphorically, right? So the first thing I would say I learned about myself in my hobby, which is rock climbing. I think our hobbies are excellent ways to learn about life. Is that mastery is not about perfection. Mastery is about our ability, and more so our willingness, to respond in the moment so that we experience life more as masterful. So I even say in coaching, when I'm teaching students, I say, there is no such thing as coaching mastery, and they're all like, what? I'm like, but masterful coaching happens every single day. Let yourself off the hook.
can you speak more about that metaphor and of actually climbing the mountaintop and having fears arise and that?
Yeah, so being on the rock, it almost always happens where I feel completely stuck. There's nowhere to go. It appears there's nowhere to go. But really, I just have to take a moment and be really present. In the present moment, possibilities surface. Our awareness of possibilities, that is, because they're always there. So our awareness of possibilities surface. So coming back to that present moment, I'm able to respond masterfully, take a look at all the possibilities and go, oh, that next handhold is right there. But I missed it when I was in fear because I was just looking at the goal, which is to go up. That linear thinking, right?
Yes.
So we brought in our awareness, we brought in our possibilities. And that's where, what I would say, masterful living exists. And we can let ourselves off the hook about being perfect because that's, let that go out the window.
Yeah, absolutely, because perfection is a trap. And in a way, it's very self-defeating, we know that, but in a way, it's also, I believe, a defense mechanism, because then something holds us back from actually getting in there and taking the risk.
Yeah.
And so when we get in there and take the risk, what I hear you say too is that, and we let ourselves off the hook, that we may have those moments of fear on the mountain, climbing, hoping to reach that, and there may be a couple detours along the way. But if we're fully present as we're moving towards that goal, that's the masterpiece. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, and if the goal is just to see how far I can get, right? Versus, if I don't make it, then, that's no good. But just have fun with the process.
Laurel, thank you so much for reading my memoir. I so appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. The Breakaway Girl was absolutely amazing, Paulette. It was, it resonates, I think, with so many people on so many levels. So,
thank you. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate it and for reading it, taking the time, and for your endorsement of it. And it's so cool and interesting how things evolve when you do decide to heed the call.
yes.
As I did I need to write this book. I wasn't sure why. And from the Breakaway Girl, this new platform has arisen, the Breakaway Academy. And in the Breakaway Academy, in our courses, will be one moment where clients will be asked to name a breakaway moment. So I'd like to ask you if you'd be willing to share with our audience a breakaway moment you might have had.
Yes. I I had a very poignant breakaway moment in my life. I've had many, but this really shook me to my core. I grew up really struggling, just emotionally, high levels of social anxiety, depression. I really never thought I'd amount to anything in my life. It's like, oh, my sister's amazing, straight A student, but not me. I don't know what my path is in the world. So I lived in the limit. Lived in the limit. And to the point where I was scared of spirituality because I was like, wow, that's, I'm not there. So I kept everything very science, very atheist in this little box, and it was very comfortable to think that way. And so I really didn't believe that there was more to life than meets the eye at all. And one moment I was laying, I moved back in with my parents as a single mom, and I was laying on the bed, and I just kept saying in my mind, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Just over and over and over again. And finally I was just like, I give up. I was like, I don't know. So I decided, it's really interesting. I didn't really feel like a real big prompting. I just decided to get up, and I got out of the room that I was in. I marched myself over to, my mom has all these books. That's something we share. And plopped myself down next to her bookcase. And I was just like, I'll just pick a random book. I'm just sitting there feeling defeated. And I just picked this random book, and I opened it to this random page. And on that page, it said, this must be comfort to those who ask themselves, what is wrong with me? And my whole explanation of how things are shattered. It was like, this defies probability. What just happened? How is this I mean, it was just so eye-opening. And at that moment, I realized there's got to be more to life than, meets the eye. There's got to be, and that opened me up. And I decided, I'm done with the limits. I'm done with all that. There's more here. Mm-hmm. And so what's interesting is years later, I went back to my mom's bookshelf and I got this random book that I had never seen and I'd never picked up before, and I randomly picked. It's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. And this is the exact book. It has her name in it. And I just had to double check that my recollection was accurate. And so I found it, that I had opened up to page 4, not knowing. I literally just was like, and my eyes landed on what's wrong with me. And before that it said, this should be a relief to all of you out there who have been wondering what is wrong with me. Powerful, life-changing moment.
So those moments where, as to just summarize what I heard you say, is that you were in that, I love how you said it, I lived in the limit.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way and a powerful way to say it. And I hope the audience takes that in, that we sometimes are living in the limit. We're not even recognizing that we are.
Right.
But we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were in that moment when you felt so defeated and you're drawn, you just, not even so much drawn, but you were. Mm-hmm. Something was
something was
calling
there.
You,
something was there.
Moving you forward. Mm-hmm. And there you are, and you pull off that book.
Yeah.
And I really hope the audience hears that too, because that happens, but you listened.
Right.
And sometimes it happens and we don't.
Yeah.
So to be able to really take that moment in and pause and go, wow, there's something here that is guiding me.
Yeah.
That's very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to go back and go, maybe that was just my imagination.
Yes, exactly. It was like second guessing myself. Mm-hmm. And I looked, I was like, oh my gosh. So I highlighted it. And what I learned later was a lesson in the Course in Miracles. Mm-hmm. And that is, we are always only one perspective shift away from a transformation. Just one. Right? You think of the mustard seed moving a mountain. It's just one. But it doesn't feel like it, right? Because the mountain feels like the mountain. But I think that's really important to note in terms of potential, because the problem can feel so big. Yet if we can find that shift from the problem into the possibility, what is possible here, what do I want to create, then we can choose. We can choose what we want to do with a situation, how we want to respond to a situation. The Course in Miracles also says, and this is directly related to potential, that you have taught what you are, but you have yet to allow what you are to teach you.
Say that again, please.
You have taught what you are. You have yet to allow what you are to teach you. Right?
That's pretty powerful.
That is very powerful. Highest self. Like, if we sit and listen to that part of ourselves that has the wisdom, and we all have this part of ourselves that has the insights, that is connected to all, connected to other people, right? Then, life just flows.
I'm really excited thank you for being here. It's just been an incredible time together. And I'm so excited how we use similar language and then different language, and how language is so important, has so much potency and power, that our audience could hear us speaking and may hear something from you that is so incredibly new for them, that's just going to light them up and open that doorway. Mm-hmm. And when I speak about living your legacy self, I am speaking about really learning how to tap into your highest self. Mm-hmm. So we're saying the same things in different ways. And if you could please share with our audience maybe 2 or 3 golden nuggets that they could take away with today about living their legacy self.
Absolutely, I'd love to. So I've got 3 things.
All right, awesome.
All right, so the first thing I want to say is that the first step to living a legacy would be to align with highest self or true self, right? that alignment then opens the door to our potential. And through that door, if we choose to go through the door, we can leave a legacy. Because at that point, if we're living at that level, we're leaving a positive impact, aka legacy, right?
Yes.
So so my recommended starting point is actually not to go out and say, what's my life purpose? The first step would be to find alignment with true self. So step number 1 is to identify the inner critic. And we can do that by, there's a little exercise where you can say, what does my inner critic feel like? You know, what does it tell me? What are its messages? And you just kind of free flow, just write all this down. What does it look like? If it had a texture, a color, and just draw it all out, and then put a name to it. And doing this allows us to have a relationship to it. So mine's called the false alarm, and it's like spiky, and it's orange and yellow and red. And so now whenever I start to, that fear creeps up or my inner critic is stepping in, I'm like, oh, there's the false alarm. And even in the name, right? It allows some levity, like, oh, it's the false alarm. And we all have it. So just knowing like this is it. It's such a normal part of the human experience to have the fears and the inner critic. That's so normal. So put a name on it, have fun with it. Even make fun of it if you want. And the second one is to then do the flip side. What does your highest self feel like? When you're in that energy, or when you're meditating, or you're in that space of clarity, what does that feel like? What might it look like? What colors might be there? So mine ended up being the illuminator, where it was a sun and it had an amber glow to it. And so then in those moments where I identify the inner critic, then I can say, okay, what would my illuminator have to say about this? Right? It's this doorway into the other perspective that's fun, quick, and easy to do. And it's also, I also don't want to minimize it, because in the Sufi teaching, they say fear is half a message. Fear is what we don't want. But our heart has the other half of the message of what we do want. So this is a fun little, these 2 exercises are a fun little way to move from fear into the what do we want, or even into our wisdom about what do we want to create. All right, so those are 2. And then the third one is a lesson from ducks.
Okay, this sounds fun.
So this is so fascinating. Did you know that ducks, when they preen themselves, are putting an oil on their feathers? And that allows them to float.
Oh.
So if they did not have that oil, it acts like a barrier between the water, allowing them to float. So they're in the water, but not consumed by the water.
That's such another great metaphor.
Right? So the invitation here is to create a short or long morning spiritual practice that supports you, right, to float throughout your day, that will help you get through your day.
Powerful. I love it. Thank you so much. Yes, that's great. And I think everybody, those are simple enough, and you explain them so beautifully that can play with that and take that on and see what they want to explore a little bit. And actually in the Breakaway Academy as well, we incorporate some of these ideas and the inner critic. And what I have found too is that, well, I love it because you can be playful with it, because sometimes we're so hard on ourselves. And that we just want to beat ourselves up. But when you put some levity in it, as you say, then it lightens you from the inside.
Yeah.
And that sometimes this idea of fear is only half the story and the heart is the other half. I always think that maybe there's a grain of truth or a grain of something in that inner critic that's trying to wake me up.
Yeah.
That it isn't, rather than or that in the past where I felt so diminished by that inner critic, it's like, oh, what does she have to say today? I can't remember what I named mine. I change it. I do the exercise often. Sometimes it's this big ear that's vibrating and, but just to have fun with it and go, this is all these things that we tell ourselves. It's so interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
And you're right on. It is I believe we all have an internal GPS.
Yes.
And those are the emotions that are like off track,
Yes.
or aligned. You can feel it, right?
Yeah. Bring me back home to self.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so
I heard
beautiful.
somebody say that GPS is like the God protective service, the inner GPS.
Ooh, I like that.
Because it's saying like, okay, we're off track.
Yes, yes, that's so cool. And some of my friends are starting to call me the legacy GPS.
Ooh, I
So
love that.
I know it's kind of fun, right?
That's great.
Yeah, and I love that the God potential in there too.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, awesome. Yes, thank you. So, before you leave today, would you offer our audience, our guests that are viewing today, I love that gratitude possibility little form that you do. And would you show that and do that for our audience?
Absolutely. Yes, so there's different power poses that we can do that align our energy and help us step out into the world so that we can be aligned when we do step out. And so this is one of my favorites. I do this every morning as my little duck exercise, my little spiritual practice. But it's that you get grounded, and then I'd call it hugging the universe, where you just completely open and you receive. And from here, you can, say your intentions for the day. You can fill this space with whatever possibilities you choose to. And just as breathing, we want to remember to receive. In our intentions, we extend outward. And in our presence, we receive. And it feels so good. I just don't even ever want to stop. This is a pose I could sit in for a long time. So, yeah. It's very simple. I find that the most powerful truths are often the most simple.
Yes.
And doable.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping too for our audience, that things are not so like just another huge thing that people have to do, but to keep it simple and start to incorporate and build on each other.
Yeah.
And just sitting here like this, you could feel the tingling and the vibration and this expansiveness of the heart and the chest.
So heart opening. Yes, very heart opening. Yes.
Yeah, like, okay, I'm ready, world.
Yeah.
Yes. Feed me. Yes.
Absolutely. There's something very fulfilling and nourishing in that pose as well that can fill you up for the day.
Well, Laurel, thank you again so much for driving up here and for joining us and for offering all of who you are and your highest potential to me and to our guests and to our audience. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Laurel and I would love to hear from you, and we want to hear what you have learned, how you've been inspired, and what golden nugget you're going to take on, and perhaps one of your breakaway moments. There are so many, as Laurel said, we experience many throughout our life, but maybe there's one particular that has created such a shift that has opened the door to so much more of who you are. So please come on over to PauletteBodeman.com, and all the info will be here that you can share with us how you enjoyed these interviews with our guest Laurel today and what your breakaway moment was. Ciao.
Bye.
So in my world, bleh. I knew that was not gonna fly.
You're getting into all of this and getting to learn yourself here. In my world, bleh.
There's gonna be some good outtakes.
There is. We gotta keep a couple outtakes, I think. Even this. Shake it out. Breathe. Okay. Okay.